Hi, welcome to day 7 of Inktoberfest here at Hedgehog Hollow, hosted with Tonic Studios USA. We're super excited to be starting a new set of different inks. So today we're talking about alcohol inks, and I hope you enjoyed that full distress range we had. I will link up the playlist in that top right hand corner so that you can check out anything that you might have missed. And if you subscribe to that playlist, we'll make sure that you get all that information. You can also hit that subscribe button underneath this video and hit the bell so you get all of our Inktoberfest videos. Today we're starting, as I mentioned, with alcohol inks. We're going to do a really kind of comprehensive back to basics look at some of the different things you can do. Hopefully your ring of swatches is filling up just as mine is, but on the table I have a whole collection of alcohol inks that we're going to go through. We're going to talk about mixatives, we're going to talk about different things. Tomorrow we'll talk about blending solution, and the day after we're going to be talking about alcohol lifting. And tomorrow is our first guest designer for Inktoberfest, so we're super excited about that too. I've got blending solutions here, I've got blending pans, I've got different inks we can use, the palette, the tool sets you can get, different applicators, different papers, the difference between Yupo and alcohol ink or glossy cardstock, different things we can use to help react, and some different options. If you don't have the range of alcohol inks, you can use any alcohol inks, whether that's a Copic refill, where it's another brand of alcohol inks, or an alcohol marker refill, like the new Ultra New ones. So many different options, so many things to show you. I'm even going to show you foiling on your alcohol inks as well. So let's get started. So there's so many different things on my desktop here, so I'm going to talk through all of them and then we're going to do some demonstrations of different things you can do. I suggest you grab a cup of tea. I have an iced coffee next to me because there's so much to tell you in here. So let's start with the applicators themselves. So you can use either of your regular blending tool ones. You can buy specific alcohol ones if you want to, but I tend to just grab my blending ones. And then you can get felt in the appropriate size. So if you want to use your circular ones, you can get that. Or you can get felt pre-cut for the rectangular ones. You could, of course, also cut your own felt, but I just find it's kind of easy to buy them in the packets, and I probably don't use my alcohol inks enough to warrant doing that. I used to do it a while ago, but I haven't done that recently. Now, also, something really important with alcohol inks are the papers you use. So let's start with those. So many of you may have heard of Yupo paper. Also now comes in a heavy stock and in 8 by 10 inches, or you can buy the smaller pieces. Whee! That's because it's white. You can buy the smaller pieces as well in just the regular weight of Yupo. The heavy stock is really nice to work with. I tend to just get mine and I cut them down to kind of cardstock size and then work from there, but you can do it however you like. And there are other brands of Yupo paper, and I do plan to do at some point a Yupo paper kind of video because there's translucent, there's all sorts of different types. And then you also get alcohol ink cardstock, which is a glossy cardstock. You can also get foil tape sheet, and we're going to ink on all of these different surfaces just to give you an idea. But Yupo paper, which I have here, is a plastic paper, so it's an acrylic paper, whereas glossy cardstock is regular cardstock on the bottom that has a gloss coating on it, and this behaves just like paper. So I can tear this away or like that, so it tears just like regular paper. It's actually incredibly porous, but that gloss allows you some time to work with your alcohol inks. And this is the cardstock I used when we did this fun technique yesterday with microglaze. So this was that glossy cardstock. So it's cardstock on the bottom, it's glossy on top, and this is where I use the oxides, and I brought back that shine with the microglaze. Same cardstock. Yupo paper, because it is a plastic paper, is really hard to tear. So I can kind of crumple this up, but it doesn't really tear. It's not, you know, it's really durable. I'm putting quite a lot of effort in, and that piece isn't tearing at all. So that's the difference between those. And you can use alcohol inks on any non-porous surface. So if you have, we're going to show you a fun technique using the glass mat. You can do that. You can do it on foil tape. You can do it on acetate. You can do it on glass. So anything non-porous is perfect for working with alcohol inks. So that covers some more things from my desktop, and I'm laying them out in front of me so that we get to do some really fun techniques with them. This is the alcohol ink palette that was recently released, or I should say in January it was released, and there's enough here that you put a drop in here, and then you can work with your blending solution or isopropyl alcohol, and you can put all your different colors in here. Beautiful color range. I normally have mine arranged on the wall, but I've got them in a basket for this, and they're just so pretty. You saw them at the beginning in that beautiful piece there in their rainbow order. So this is the palette if you want to paint with them and do some other techniques with them. There is an alcohol ink tool set that includes some paintbrushes. I would recommend keeping separate paintbrushes for working with your alcohol inks versus working with your watercolors and things like that, just because the alcohol and things that you put in them. I bought the Ranger tool set. It has a mini vaporizer, the spritz bottle in here, the mini mister. Do not fill this with the alcohol blending solution. This is the blending solution that we're going to work with. It has a resin binder in there. If you want to fill your mini mister with something that's going to react with your alcohol inks, just use isopropyl alcohol. One of these will work perfectly as well. And I buy mine in the spray bottles, and I'll make sure that is linked in that description below for you. I also have a Nuvo lightless bottle, depending what I'm doing, and you can also fill a mini mister. So we can do that too and show you the difference between those. There's the alcohol blending solution, as I mentioned. So this is really fun, and we're going to have a whole focus on this tomorrow. Victoria Marie from Victoria Marie's Scraps will be with us as a guest designer, and she's going to talk all about blending solution. And then there is a blending pen that you can fill with blending solution, and if she doesn't cover that in tomorrow's video, we'll make sure after Inktoberfest that there is a video on that. But I know that she is obsessed with alcohol inks and was super excited to be doing this post for us. But you can also kind of pick up inks. Jennifer McGuire recently did a video where you could colour in and things with this blending pen. You can lift the colour from one and put it in another. So there's some really fun things you can do on that as well. So you can also, I should mention, you can fill this with alcohol inks. It does take a lot of alcohol inks, but you could make a custom alcohol ink pen if you wanted to do that as well. Now, I did grab my archival ink here, the Wendy Becky Archival. I'm a recent convert since doing her class at Ranger, New Jersey. And this is perfect because you're going to be on non-porous surfaces because the alcohol inks, this is the perfect ink to use over the top of those alcohol inks. And we hopefully will get to that as well in this video. And of course, we need to talk about the alcohol inks themselves. So I have filled this basket. I have every single color but one. My full set syndrome is really struggling, but the one color I need is currently out of stock everywhere. So I'm trying to be as patient as possible, not succeeding overly well. But this is the whole collection of alcohol inks. And then we have alcohol ink mixatives, which we'll also cover. There's a few different ones in here, and we'll dive through that as well. So let's start making some mess, or some projects, I should say. So lots and lots of different things to get through. I'm going to start by working on press and seal, only because it makes my cleanup super easy, and I will be using the glass mat for a particular technique, but I love working on press and seal because as soon as I'm done, I just throw it away and I'm done. So let's start by working on some Yupo. We are going to work on a piece of foil tape. I'm going to grab this here. And we'll be using all of these panels when we work with that alcohol lift ink as well. So we're going to work with some foil. We're going to work with some alcohol ink cardstock as well. So let's make some pretty patterns on here. I'm going to grab one of my blending tools, and I'm going to put a piece of foam on the bottom. So we're going to kind of experiment with different techniques. I'll do each one slightly differently. Let's choose some alcohol ink colours. I try to be a little bit more brave with some of these colours these days. I'm going to go with this. And this. Okay, I have a good variety of colours out here that we're going to play with these pieces. So let's choose a blue we're going to choose stream, we're going to choose yellow, and we're going to choose botanical. So the first thing we can do is just put some dots of colour on here. And a little bit goes a long way. You may think, oh, there's not much on her foam. You'll be surprised how far this foam will go. So I'm working on the glossy cardstock. As I said, we'll work on all of them. And what you can start doing is just dabbing down. I'm going to introduce some blue. I do typically wear an apron when I'm working with my alcoholics, or I may just wear a dark jumper. Either works perfectly well. You can also work on black with the mixatives. I haven't grabbed any to show you, but if you use the Clearly for Art from Wendy Becky, the kind of acrylic that she has, you can use the mixatives and they show up so pretty on black. I'm sure there's another tutorial in there somewhere. So you can see here how I'm building up some fun effects. So this is just one technique that you can do. And you can keep layering, keep going, keep adding colour. And I like to add a little bit of colour, go back, add a bit more, because it's very easy to add colour. It's not so easy to take it away again. So on this one, we've used Botanical, Sailboat Blue, Dandelion, and Indigo. And the thing is, no two alcohol inked panels are ever going to come out the same. Never, ever, ever. And I'll be cutting these down into tags to go on my ring. You absolutely could use them as backgrounds for cards. I want a little bit of indigo just in here. And this is where, if you got too much, you could add your blending solution and you can take away. And I cannot wait for Victoria to show you some of the cool things you can do. Blending solution. So that's one. Isn't that really cool? Wouldn't it look gorgeous for like a tree theme or a masculine card? All of those kinds of things. So that's one of those options and we'll come back to that. I'm now going to start working on my Yupo paper and I'm going to peel that off and I'm going to grab a new felt because I want to start with a different colour scheme. And I'm going to work with pinks and purples. I'm going to grab some raspberry, and I'll tell you these colours as I go along, so if you want to play around with these at home, you can do. There's a particular blue that I'm looking for that I don't think I've got out yet, no. I would like to use, there we go. So, I am going to add onto my piece here, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to add a line of amethyst. And don't worry if you get a dot on there. So here, you can see, you can do direct to paper. Maybe we'll do direct to paper, seeing as this is decided that that's what I'm going to do for this one. So you can do it, that it just kind of goes down, and you see how these kind of will spread. And we'll do the other technique, we'll do that on the foil. But sometimes these things just decide that's what you want to do. Now, don't worry if you don't have all of these different colours. And you can see how I'm putting some colours inside of each other so I get a different effect. I'm going to go back to blue. And yes, my fingers are getting absolutely covered. But I'll link up the scrubby that I use that kind of gets my fingers pretty clean. Now the other thing that I can do, I'm just going to use a regular tag to help me cover this up, is if I spritz on this side some alcohol first, and then I put down, you're going to notice you get a different effect. You see how those bubbles actually shrink rather than expand? So you can really play about with different colours, different ideas. I'm going to put some colours down and then I'm going to show you a fun way to make, if you spritz first, how you can make some different effects. And there is no reason you can't do the same on the same panel, or different techniques on the same panel. Then I'm going to take one of these air things. This is like one of those keyboard cleaner type things, like an air rocket type thing. And you can see here how I can make those colours spread out. And I can make them move down here to fill in a gap. I can make them move over here. I could grab a little bit of turquoise and put a drop in there. I could add some raspberry and I can put a drop here. And I want to work kind of quickly because I want to show you something else you can do while this is still a little bit wet. I'm just filling out those areas. So you can see here, there's a few areas I want to just dry. So you can see the difference kind of between these two areas, but they look kind of cool together. Now here I have some of those kind of thick, sticky lines. If you've ever worked with alcohol inks before, you may have found that they don't dry particularly easily. What can you do? Well, you can grab some foil. So I have all sorts of different foils here. I particularly like thermoweb foils to work with. These are all different thermoweb foils that I have here. And I am going to choose this lovely kind of light gold. The Gina K ones work particularly nicely as well. But you really can grab anything. I'm going to put this one down, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down. I'm going to give it a really, really good press. And I like to leave this for a couple of minutes because I find that I get a better effect if I leave this. So give it a really good rub and we're just going to pop it to the side. It doesn't matter if it gets alcohol ink on the bottom. Don't worry about it, it's fine. So I started with a amethyst, but for this one I used aquamarine, purple twilight, amethyst, flamingo, raspberry, wild plum, and turquoise. Now you don't have to use that many colours. You can work with one or two colours. Let's go back. So I worked with, that was amethyst that I put on there. I'm going to put some flamingo on there, and I'm going to put some aquamarine on there. I'm going to put it to the side so that I don't end up with that same problem I had before. And I'm just putting lines this time, so it's something a little bit different. I'm going to go back to that aquamarine. I'm guessing this aquamarine somewhere in the bottle has a leak because I seem to be getting it from everywhere. And literally, it's going everywhere too, so I'll look at that later, that's okay. Okay, so you can see I have stripes on here. So you can work with patterns and you can experiment on what patterns you like, but then what I can do with these stripes is I can make striped effects. So you see there how I get some fun stripes. If I want to, I can also stripe in the other direction. And this is on that metal foil, so I can kind of have things. I can do waves, and they'll kind of settle themselves out. But I'm going to go back to some stripes. And now I've mixed the colours, I'm going to have more subtle stripes. But that's okay too. So you can do all sorts of different things. If I didn't like it, I can do this. And I can refresh it. Or if I really, really, really don't like it, I can grab a piece of kitchen towel. I can grab some isopropyl alcohol. And this one's off, let's turn it back on. And as I mentioned, I buy my alcohol in these spray bottles and I will link that for you in the description. But I can just take, and I can clean this panel off completely if I keep going back in. So I can take that back off, and that you can only do that with something like foil or Yupo paper. Your glossy cardstock's going to absorb the alcohol ink and you can't just then clean it off afterwards. So I'm just going to add some colours back on here. And this time I'm going for patterns, but you can do whatever you like. Whatever you kind of fancy. You can do polka dots, you can do all sorts of different things. I'm going to go back in, and because there's a little bit of alcohol left on here from where I just cleaned it off, I'm going to get some different reactions. And you can see that I kind of got that pebbly effect to it. Now I can also take my light mist bottle that contains that same isopropyl alcohol. I just distilled some from that larger bottle. And if I spritz it, and you can see I spritzed it super, super light from a long way away, I get a different pebbly effect. Isn't that cool? That one. Now the other thing you can do is add mixative. Now you can either add it straight onto here, I could add it on here, and it would lay down some more colour, or I can do a separate felt piece. And your mixatives come in snow cap, there's a rose gold, this is the snow cap, the other one was pearl, there's a silver and a gold, and I think there might even be a couple of others in here as well. But again, we'll link all those things for you. They each contain inside, and I'm going to work with, just need to think which one I want to work with based on what I'm doing. I'm going to work with rose gold. So this is one of the newer colours. You'll notice some of my packaging is super old. They used to be Adirondack colours. They now come under the Holtz brand. But what I want to do is I want to shake it. I tend to give it a tap until I can hear that ball moving. And then you want to shake it just for maybe 30 seconds or so. And that mixes the mixative of kind of that mica or whatever pigment is in there with the liquid. So you want to just make sure it's nicely mixed. And then I'm going to put some dots of mixative on here. You can do it however you want. Alcohol inks are so much fun because I could play for hours and hours and hours. And what it's doing is here, it's laying down, like here, this is some of that rose gold pigment. I could swipe it through, and I could add kind of swipes of pigment. I can also use my isopropyl alcohol to spritz, and then I get kind of different bits of pigment in there. And then the alcohol is also reacting with the alcohol I've already laid down. And what it does is it just adds a little dot of extra shimmer in there. You can see there's like these veins in here. These are all that mixative. So you can add the mixative to the same thing. You can add it to your original piece and kind of get different things. You can mix the two. So if I want to go back in and I think, oh, actually, I think I'll add a bit more blue, and I'll add a bit more of the flamingo. Amazing color name, like this. And I could even add a different mixative. I could go with the pearl. I'm just adding some pearl in here too. And I can go over the top. So you can layer. Just don't be afraid to play. So this is going to add some pearlized pieces, and I can see them already. I'm already loving this piece. If I lift this up, I've got some pearlized in there. I know it's hard to see against the other reflections, but there's pearlized pieces in there as well. So there's another option for you, and we'll play with these pieces more later. Now this piece I want to work with that we'd added the foil to. I'm going to make sure I press down my foil, and a little tip I like to do. Now some people would just pull this foil off and they have great success. I personally like to add just a touch of heat, just a few seconds, not much at all. Literally, that's it. And I'm just going to hook this. I keep a hook under my table that I keep that on. Now I'm going to peel this off. Sometimes I get lots, sometimes I only get a little. But here I have a nice amount in here. So you see here where we had those sticky bits, there's foil attached to these veins. Now, sometimes I don't get the veins that I want, and there is a little bit of a way that you can kind of add some in. So what I do is I take my Smooth Precision Nouveau glue pen, and I just kind of track some of those veins. Not huge amounts of glue or anything like that, because otherwise you'll get pores of them. And I also kind of lift and drop down my glue pen as I'm going. and I do a little, make sure my pen is flowing, there we go. And if I get like kind of a larger piece, I just kind of dot my finger in, and then I might dot my finger down. And so you can kind of add extra texture and stuff. And then I can grab my foil again and put it down, give it a nice piece. Again, I like to just add that little bit of heat. Just find the heat, I don't know, it just seems to give me better kind of activation of my foil on there. And I can peel that back, and you can see I've got even more foil. So you can add foil if there's like a vein that you wish it covered up, if there's a bit that you didn't like, hey, you can fix it. Super, super easy. So you can see that. That is another technique with your alcohol inks. Let me grab a few more pieces of Yupo because I have a couple more techniques I still want to share with you. I really kind of wanted this to be the Alcohol Ink 101, hence the name of the video. This one, I'm going to grab a stencil, and I know some of you may kind of be like, ah, she's grabbed a stencil and she's going to put alcohol ink all over it. Yes, I am. It's not going to affect your stencil. It's going to work just fine, and you're not going to have any issues. You can absolutely clean it off too. You can grab that isopropyl alcohol and off you go. So let's pick up. Now, when I'm working with the stencils, don't ask me why. I like working with my round blending tool. My camera's having an issue focusing because it's on white. But we're going to use that round blending tool. We're going to pick out some oranges. Whee! Not what I intended to happen. Has that ever happened to you? Not what you intended at all. So we're going to fill our blender slightly off to the side. And so far I've used Peach Bellini, and I've used Sunflower Orange, or Sunset Orange possibly. A few of these seem to have a leak in them. I think I might need to go back and just kind of push those tops in. And the final one I'm going to use here is Butterscotch. Now, I always say don't load your blending tool up, particularly when you're doing this technique, too much, because otherwise you can see here it splodges out underneath. So I'm going to go quite lightly, and you're going to do that dabbing technique that we talked about earlier. And I'm kind of rotating this like this between my fingers as I go. And sometimes you'll need more pressure than others. And I'm going to lift that up. And so you can see I've traced my stencil with alcohol inks. Isn't that cool? So it's just another use for your stencil. It's another use for those alcohol inks. Let's go back to that palette we talked about too. So I can take this palette and I'm going to add in some flamingo. There's kind of a little area for you to add it in the center, which is where I tend to do it. I take my Mr. tool set here. Trying to find that opening for it, and you can either use blending solution or a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. Either works absolutely fine, and you can paint with your alcohol inks. Isn't that cool? So you can create pieces of art. You can do all sorts of fun things in there too. So that's another option you have, and I have 2 more techniques to show you. So let's grab this next piece of Yupo. And the other one I wanted to show you is still with our air kind of blow tool thing. And one thing you can do is put down just one larger drop of alcohol ink, and you can move it out. And people make beautiful flowers like this. They make petals. They make all sorts of absolutely gorgeous things. And there's nothing that says you can't just use a single colour. I mean, I'm just using this is aquamarine, and it's a gorgeous blue colour. Look at that background that I'm creating. You don't have to necessarily use lots of colours. And quite often, if I'm making just a solid background like this, I would lay down lots and lots of aquamarine, and you can see just all those different variations in there too. And you may think this is a lot of ink going down, but it's literally a drop at a time. It's not huge amounts of ink at all. And here I'm just going to lay down enough. And I'm making sure I just cover in any white space. As I say, little bits like that I don't mind. I don't want huge gaps anywhere, but just those little gaps can look really nice. And as I mentioned, there is still some of those kind of areas that won't dry. I'm going to give it a good blast with my air tool, just to make sure there's no kind of ink swimming around. And then I'm going to grab some foil again. Let us grab, what should we do this time? I think I'm going to do, got lots of pretty colours here. I have this like kind of, I think this is called Antique Penny, this particular foil. And you can see you can use it many times. And so I'm going to lay it down onto those areas. I'm going to give it a minute or two to kind of dry, set, however you want to call it on here. Give it a really good press down. Now if I peel it straight back up, I find I don't get all of those areas that are ready to go. But we can give that a helping hand with our heat tool. And just kind of going over the top, backwards and forwards. It just kind of helps it dry a bit quicker. I'm totally an impatient crafter, so I don't like waiting for things to dry. But I kind of work systematically, backwards and forwards, top to bottom. Keep moving that heat tool as well. Just find that kind of helps too. Again, give it a nice rub. Make sure I've got all of those areas. When you heat it, you'll find you get little bubbles up here. Won't make any difference. And I start to kind of peel back. Oh, look at that. Didn't that come out absolutely amazing? Here, I'll lift it up. Look at all of that veining in there. So pretty. Wouldn't that make the most beautiful background? Or you could die cut something from it, die cut a word or a flower or something from it. Just stamp the outline and then die cut, and you've got all of that detail in the center. Beautiful. So lots and lots of techniques there for you. Let me pop all of these. Let's just make sure my lids are on nice and tightly, because the last thing I want is these all over my desk. Although if you do get it everywhere, don't worry. Alcohol blending solution, isopropyl alcohol. I recommend using 91%. I find that works best for me. I'm just making sure those lids are nice and tight, and you can clean up your surface. But this press and seal is amazing, and you can see how easy this is going to be to clear up. I put all my foams in the middle, or felt pieces rather. My work surface is clean, apart from those few little bits around the edge, and to get rid of those, spritz, kitchen towel, and we are clean and ready to go with our next technique. Now for this technique, you will need a non-porous surface. Something like the glass mat is perfect. That's why I am working on here. Although I work on here all the time. If you watch any other videos, it's kind of on the skew though. Let's sort that out because I don't like that. So super easy to work with now. we are going to grab some more alcohol inks, and I'm going to grab an unusual selection of colours probably. A couple of greens, some yellows, I want some pink, I want purple, I want some blue. So you can just go through whatever your favourite colours are. I might go with a little bit of orange too. Okay. I'm going to choose that one. Yeah, that one. Okay, so here I have patina, butterscotch, sailboat blue, citrus, dandelion, raspberry, and indigo. I want to make sure I have a few pieces of Yupo to hand because you're going to get a few out of this. So I'm going to make sure I have a nice little selection. I just knocked over something actually I wanted to talk to you about, so I'm going to talk about it now. This is the Copic Various ink that you'll see me use for hair and fun techniques like that and fur. But what you can also use it for is working with your alcohol inks. It will work a little bit like blending solution. Again, it's going to give you a slightly different effect. Try it out. If you have a bottle of Various ink, try using it like blending solution and see the results you get. But I wanted to mention that you can use this, you can use the colours blender, you can use the blending pen, you can use the toolkit, you can use isopropyl alcohol, any of those. But whatever you do, please don't spray this colourless blender or the alcohol blending solution. I know I do have some videos in the past where I did it. I didn't know there was a problem doing that. I did always make sure my windows were open and it's well ventilated, but I have since learned you shouldn't be doing that. So if you do that, make sure you follow all those safety instructions. So I'm going to put down some different colours, and I am putting them straight onto my mat. You can work in the palette area if you want to be able to see what the different colours are. I'm kind of a bit of a rebel. I'm not great at doing those kinds of things. And you're going to want to work fairly quickly, and you're going to see them kind of react on your mat as they did when we put them onto non-porous surfaces, like your Yupo or your glossy cardstock. And so I'm just kind of dropping bits everywhere. You can do droplets, you can do however you want to do. You can also add mixative into this. So I'm going to do one without, and then I'll add some mixative in. I'm going to make sure I have mixative to hand and that it's pre-shaken. So let's go with that pearl that we used earlier. And this is a bit like the Distress ink smushing. So I'm going to kind of put this in, and I'm going to try and pick it up somewhere. And you can see all these pretty colours. Look at that effect that I get, kind of that rainbow effect. There's a bit down here that didn't get enough, so I'm going to add some in. Beautiful flash of pink in there. I'm going to pop that to the side. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to add some mixative. Just a couple of bits, not much. There we go. And I also want a little bit of that pink in the middle of this bluey green area. So I'm going to add that in too. And I'm going to smush again. Pick up my corner. Okay, I need more down here, I need more over here, I need more over here. I need more here. If you need to put more ink down, put more ink down. This is really good fun though. I love these because you never know what you're going to get, but you get some beautiful effects of things as well. So you can see here how I'm kind of picking up different colours. This bit's empty. And then the other thing you can do is if you have loads of ink, or even if you have a little bit of ink, you can spray. You can still add your foil to this if you have those areas. You can spritz it afterwards. Look at this. I'm kind of doing it off to the side. I know it's at the top there. And then you can move that ink around. So like here where I really need an area to fill up. And so I can kind of add some of those effects. I'll show it to you afterwards, don't worry. So you can see here, I'm going to lift this up. I've got some really fun effects. So that's blowing it and adding just isopropyl alcohol over it. Isn't that cool? Super cool. So that's another one that we can do. And then I don't want you to waste anything that's on here. So I'm going to spritz this pretty heavily because it's dried. It's going to dry because it's a non-porous surface and alcohol inks dry on non-porous surfaces. So you can still spritz and lift. Look at that. So pretty. And if you don't like that light bit, we'll go in and add some dark. I am running out of room to dry these. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to stitch. Okay, it's kind of getting a little bit dry again. And so each print you do is going to get lighter and lighter as you lift out more and more ink. This one's kind of pretty saturated. So I'm going to add some air in. This bit down here needs some more. I think there's some pretty colours over here I haven't picked up. I'm going to... This is the thing, if I didn't like this, I can just wipe everything off and start again. I kind of really like some of those veins and things that I'm getting in there. So I have used pretty much all the ink that's there. I'm really struggling to pick some up now. So again, I'm going to spray with isopropyl alcohol. Hand sanitizer also works really, really well. You can use hand sanitizer and alcohol inks to create some really fun effects. I've seen people do it on all sorts of different mediums and kind of surfaces and whatnot. So making sure that's nice and clean. Put that in the bin. So you can see here all those fun effects. So all of these prints here, this one, this one, this one. Let's move these inks out of the way. Make sure the lids are back on. So when you're working quickly, you don't always make sure those lids are on. And trust me, you don't want alcohol ink everywhere. So this one and this one. So all of these, all four of these came from one kind of smushing, and they all look totally different. What you will find is one colour does kind of start to take over. In the beginning I had a lot of pink in here, kind of got less, we've got more of those purples and yellows, and then we ended up with greens and blues, and then we end up with mostly blue. So one colour does start to kind of take over sometimes. And it really depends what you've put down on all those kinds of things. But lots and lots of information in here. I wanted to just show you one last thing. I'm going to take this one here because it's kind of the lightest. And we'll be using these panels when we talk through alcohol lift ink. I'm going to just do a cleaning because there was some alcohol on the bottom there. And this is why I love spray bottles, because it really helps me clear up super, super fast. And I can also just use hand sanitizer on my hands and some kitchen towel, and my hands will come out much better. But also, do look at that scrubby that Tim recommended. And I do have another video, I'll try to link it in the top right if I can at the moment, which is all about blending solution. I used an old bottle of blending solution to kind of give a huffed technique. And actually I managed to do it completely by accident here. But what it does is it gives you these like tiny little bubbles, and the card isn't, oh yes there is. Oh no, sorry, my mistake. I used to have a card up on the wall that I did for Ellen Hudson with it that was really, really good fun. But check that out too, as I say. I'll try to link it, if not just search for alcohol ink on the Hedgehog Hollow channel and you'll find it. But what I do have here is another one. I'm still using this Inventor set. I really, really love it. These are the pumpkins. Okay, maybe it's not a traditional pumpkin thing, but I wanted to show you how with archival ink you can make these pretty, pretty backgrounds. You can die cut Yupo, glossy cardstock, all of those can be die cut. And you want to use a non-porous ink. Now I'm not a StazOn person at all. I really hate working with StazOn, and I'll avoid it at all costs if I can. But what I can do is stamp on these with archival ink. You can also heat emboss over these, and you can pretty much do anything over the top of them. But look at that, isn't that fun? So then you can stamp your images over the top. So lots and lots of things to add to our ring today. What I'll probably do is end up taking strips, but I'll show you that for Alcohol Lift Ink Day, how I ended up doing this. I'll definitely be following along with Victoria Marie tomorrow as well, as she shows us blending solution. And I can't wait to see you all again very soon. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Check out the description below. There's a coupon code today for tonic. There's a different tonic coupon code every single day. There's also a 10% off at Ellen Hudson too, so you want to check that out as well. And don't forget to ring the bell so you get all of our Inktoberfest 2018 videos and beyond. And of course, finally, please do give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed today's video. Maybe you learned a technique, or it was just good to have that refresher. We'll see you again very soon. Happy stamping. Bye.